Hello, my name is Vic Machin and I am the Mental Health Advisory Teacher for the West Sussex Mental Health Support Teams in schools, and I'd like to welcome you to this, our second virtual parent webinar. So, first of all, just to recap quickly on last week. We went over what the 6 webinars will include and what they target. We also covered the aim of these webinars, which is to give you evidence-based parenting advice that you can apply directly to your parenting to help you manage the emotional needs of your children. The webinars will include emotions, meeting your children's basic needs, play, noticing, praise, and limit setting. We also covered setting yourself some goals, which you want to achieve as a result of watching these webinars. We talked about the 7 confident thoughts, which were things such as, the world is a fairly safe place. I can cope with most things, and I have some control over the things that happen to me. And finally, we covered what parenting hotspots are, and we took the time to look at perfectionism and overprotection. The suggested practice activity last week was to think about some of your own parenting hotspots and how you could start to rub the corners off them. Take a moment here to have a think about how that's gone for you if you had a chance to do this activity during the week. You can pause the video here if you need to. I would like to start today by talking a little bit about attachment theory. It's a theory that's been around since the 1950s, and whilst I won't go into great detail here, I would like to introduce the 3 key features which can help a child to develop secure attachments. The idea behind secure attachments is that a child's primary caregiver becomes their secure base, someone they can trust to be there when they're needed, but whom they can also leave, go out, explore the world, and come back to when needed. There are 3 key elements to secure attachment. The first of these is responsiveness. The caregiver responds sensitively, accurately, and consistently when addressing the child's needs. The second is accessibility. The caregiver is present and available whenever the child needs. And finally, attunement, which means that your response to your children's emotions is in tune with how they're feeling. You could tune into them at an emotional level, help them to recognize emotions and to regulate them. The repeated experience of this validates the child's emotions and helps them to feel safe to express them. So how often do you think you need to get this right? If you haven't had this experience in your own parenting, if your own caregivers weren't responsive or accessible or in tune with your emotions, it can be a lot harder because you have to learn how to do this with your own children instead of it being a natural way of relating to others. But remember, there's no such thing as the perfect parent. We will all make mistakes and lots of things will influence this. There are lots of difficulties with being the parent who is responsive, accessible and in tune. But research suggests that we actually only need to get it right about 30 to 50% of the time for it to be good enough and to encourage that secure base with your child. Have you taught your children to ride a bike? To read? Have you taught them their times tables? All of us probably have had a go at some of these things. But have you taught your children how to manage their emotions? Teaching your children how to manage their emotions is just as crucial as teaching them how to read or write. It's important to think about how you can help your child understand what their emotions are, validate their experiences, and help them learn to manage those emotions. I'd like you now to take some time to reflect on how your parents responded to your emotions when you were little. Maybe when you were angry, scared, or sad. I'm going to give 2 minutes now for you to write down your experience of being parented around emotions. So that might have been quite difficult for some people to think back as to how their parents responded to their emotions when they were a child. For example, think about a child who's given a balloon and then very quickly that balloon gets burst on a bush. The child is very upset. But the parent says, "Oh, don't be silly, it's just a balloon." How does that feel to the child? Having your emotions punished, ridiculed, or dismissed can be distressing. By recognizing and validating children's emotions, it can help them manage those emotions and to problem solve. I'd like us now to consider this scenario where a parent and child are arguing about homework. It might be something that's perhaps familiar to you. Time to do your homework, Alex. Oh, will you stop going on at me? I hate it when you go on and on about homework. If you did your homework when I asked, then I wouldn't have to keep going on about it. It makes me not want to do it even more when you keep asking. Leave me alone. Don't shout at me, Alex. That's such an overreaction to me just trying to help make sure you do your homework. I don't understand you sometimes. Go away. Right, that's you. No screen time this evening. Now sit and think about why you can't talk to me like that. I'll check you've done your homework before dinner, and if not, you could stay in tomorrow instead of seeing your friends after school. How could this scenario have been changed to help the child calm down and share their feelings about why they don't want to do their homework? Let's have a look at the situation again. Same scenario, but with a different reaction. Time to do your homework, Alex. Oh, will you stop going on at me? I hate it when you go on and on about homework. Sorry, I can see that you really don't like me reminding you to do your homework, and it upsets you. It's just really annoying. I wish you'd just leave me alone. I know. I hate it when people go on at me too. The problem is, I worry that if you don't do your homework straight away, then you'll forget to do it until it's too late. And then you'll be all worried and stressed and end up doing it in a rush and be late for bed. But I can see that you really hate me going on about it. So what can we do to solve the problem? Just tired doing it straight after school. I'd like to watch one program on TV and then do my homework. Ah, so you just need a bit of a break before you get on with your homework. Okay, I'm okay with that. Let's try it for a week and see how it goes. I'll promise not to nag if you promise to get straight on and do it after you've watched one program. Okay? In this scenario, the parent listened to the child and in doing so discovered what the problem was. Alex, quite reasonably, just needed a short break after school. Alex then felt listened to. They felt their opinions were valid. And Alex came up with a solution to the problem, and this is a great skill for children to learn. The problem is solved without them falling out with each other. The key message is that any emotion is okay, but any behaviour is not. It's okay to be scared, but it's not okay to avoid the situation you're scared of. It's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to hit. It's okay to be frustrated, but it's not okay just to give up. Next, I want to introduce the concept of PACE. PACE can help support your child when they experience difficult emotions. It is an approach developed by Dan Hughes and Kim Golding and was initially developed when working with children with attachment difficulties and trauma. But clinicians using these techniques have found just how helpful they are when working with all families. It's directly related to attachment theory and is a really good way of understanding your child's experience, developing your relationship and understanding of each other, and is a great approach to use at times when you may be experiencing more challenging emotions and behaviours. PACE helps you to hold the child's mind alongside your own. The key elements of PACE are playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And PACE uses these to explore and support your child when they are experiencing difficult and big emotions. Playfulness brings fun and laughter to relationships. It provides reciprocal enjoyment and in the process helps a child to learn to regulate their emotions. And it also helps them to develop confidence. Playfulness is also really helpful in developing the bond between child and caregiver. Playfulness can come in many forms. It can be traditional playing together, but it can also just be being with your child and putting in playful comments in your interactions. For example, I know you don't like tidying up. Let's put some music on and tidy together. They cross the line, tell them, hey, that's not playful. Let's make a game and see who can tidy away the quickest before the sand runs out. Acceptance creates psychological safety. The focus is on acceptance of the child's inner world, their thoughts, feelings, wishes, beliefs, desires, and hopes. In accepting their experience or emotions, we are letting them know that we understand them, that we are okay with their emotions and we are not going to dismiss or challenge them. It's really important to accept that their experience is their experience. It's also important to understand that accepting their emotions does not mean tolerating certain behaviours. We can accept their experiences and emotions, but it doesn't mean we accept the behaviour. For example, you can accept your child finds something hard without letting them get away with unwanted behaviours. I know it's hard for you when you get angry, but we will need to tidy up the stuff you threw. Right now, come and sit with me till you feel calmer. I'm always here to help you find better ways to cope when you're upset. You can accept your child without accepting the behaviours. It's not you I'm angry with, it's the spitting, biting and kicking. Help me understand, how come you did that? Look upon your child with curiosity. Who is this child we're accepting? When we curiously explore within a relationship, we are expressing an interest in the other person and a desire to know them more deeply. When we direct non-judgmental curiosity towards the child's experience of themselves, others and events, they are more likely to respond positively towards us. The child starts to experience these things with us rather than on their own, which strengthens your relationship. You can use curiosity to wonder out loud what is behind the behaviour, such as, you seem upset. I wonder what happened in that last lesson of the day to make you feel like that. When you have a feeling like that, what's that all about? Let's figure it out. Are there any times when you don't feel like that? You can also try to discover their core beliefs that drive their behaviour. For example, why do you think that? Does it seem like that way all the time? Empathy. Empathy communicates our curiosity and acceptance. We stand in the other person's shoes and recognise and respond to their emotional experience. With the experience of empathy, the child is more likely to experience the parent as being with them and exploring both positive and negative emotions alongside them. It's important to stay with the child in the moment and not move to problem solving too quickly. For example, I'm sorry that happened. It makes me sad that that happened to you. Support with guidance and understanding. If you think nobody likes you at school, that must be really hard. I get it. But are there times that you think that one kid likes you? In order to validate their feelings and build trust, avoid reassuring or minimizing their experience by using phrases like, that's not true, plenty of people like you, in an attempt to make them feel better. I'd like us to think about a scenario. Kim follows a child who has stormed off in a rage. The child shouts at her to go away. Leave me alone. Kim quickly reviews the conversation they were having. She had asked the child why she got upset with her friend, but this made the child feel criticised by Kim. Inside, Kim wants to scream, "Why are you so sensitive? It makes it so hard to talk things over with you." Instead, she takes a deep breath, crouches down next to the child and says with an intensity that matches the child, "You thought I was blaming you. No wonder you're mad with me. I would be mad too if I thought someone thought it was my fault." Kim watches the child relax in front of her eyes. They have a connection. She looks at Kim with tears in her eyes and says, "I always say the wrong thing." Empathy is easy now. Kim says, "It's so sad that you feel like you keep saying the wrong thing. How tough it must be to feel others blame you when things go wrong." Kim has tears in her eyes too, as she shares all the child's fears and sense of uselessness. "I'm so glad you understand," the child says. Kim tells her that she thinks she's the bravest girl she knows to keep trying despite her doubts and fears. "I'd like you now to take a moment to write down your thoughts about how this approach feels for the child. Are there any aspects of this that you already do? Are there any bits you could start to introduce? What do you think the challenges may be with this approach?" This approach and experience helps the child to feel heard, to feel validated, and to feel their emotional experience is valid. They learn what their emotions are as someone helps them to understand their physical and emotional experience and what leads them to feel this way. Doing this with a secure caregiver helps them to figure out how to manage things. They're being listened to and valued. We know that this example is more simple and works effectively, but we are aware reality is a lot more complex, and it might take more time and practice to be able to support a child or young person in this way. So pause the video now and just take a moment to write down how you feel about this kind of approach, how it might work for you, and any problems you might have in carrying it out. It's really important that we consider our own emotions as adults. Think about the idea that we should always put on our own oxygen mask before helping others. This is because if we are not in a good position ourselves, then we're in no position to help others. This is the same as far as emotions are concerned too. When our children react in an emotional way, when they whine or scream or moan, it can trigger an emotional response in us. The problem of this is that when we have heightened emotions, our reasoning and problem solving part of the brain goes offline and we go into fight or flight mode. This makes it hard for us to be understanding and empathetic towards our children because we are heightened ourselves. Instead of reacting immediately, allow yourself to have a moment to take some long, gentle breaths. Try to breathe out for longer than you breathe in. Or perhaps do an activity that helps you to relax, such as take a short walk, colouring, or do a meditation. It's important to recognise how we feel and make a note of how that may impact our ability to parent before moving on to support our children. We recommend you take a breath, take a pause, take a moment to regulate your own emotion and to think about how you will respond rather than react. When we are responding, we think about what we want to do, whereas reacting, we are led by our emotions. I would like us to think now about how we're going to manage our own emotions in the heat of the moment when we're dealing with our children. So I want us just to have a quick reflection on these questions. So how does your emotion affect how you manage your child's emotion? So if you react to your child angrily, which everyone has done, how does that then impact how your child reacts back at you? Okay. Do your hotspots have an impact here? Think back to the last session. What are your hotspots? And when you're parenting, you're feeling yourself in those hotspots, what emotions rise up for you? And again, how does your child react to those emotions? How are you going to manage your emotion? Okay, so looking into the future, think of some strategies you can use when you feel certain emotions rising within you when you're dealing with your child. So if you tend towards kind of frustration, how are you going to manage that frustration? What are you going to do? Whether that's simply when your child starts to get angry or cross, just simply counting to 10 in your head, or are you going to step outside? Are you going to ask them to kind of leave the room for a while? How are you going to give yourself that time and space to manage your emotion before you deal with your child's emotion? And what might help you to do that? And one suggestion I saw was that a parent wore an elastic band around her wrist, and she kind of made a pact with herself that she wasn't going to shout at her child if her child shouted at her. So she wasn't going to respond to shouting by shouting. And she didn't do anything with the elastic band, but it just reminded her, that elastic band reminded her not to shout. It was a physical reminder. And a bit like that, parent, could you set yourself a little goal, something you're going to try this week to help you to manage your emotions in the moment? Okay, so it could be, I'm not going to shout like that parent, I'm not going to shout if my child shouts at me. Or it could be something like, I am not going to blame myself if my child gets upset. Or I am going to always take 5 seconds before I respond to my child's emotions. Just a small goal that will help you to manage your own emotions in the moment when dealing with your child. Okay, so if you need to pause the video now, do so here, so you can write down some of these ideas and reflections and then unpause and move on to the next slide. We're now going to move on to this week's suggested activity. Have a think about how you can use pace with your child and take time to reflect on any differences you notice as you begin to use the techniques. Remember, try to respond playfully to your child. Accept their emotions, don't write them off or dismiss them. Ask questions about how they're feeling, be curious, and empathise with your child. Step into their shoes and see things from their point of view. What phrases can you use to be curious about why they're experiencing hard emotions? And how can you be more playful? Finally, and importantly, you can think about how you can manage your own emotions to better support your child and also model these positive behaviours. Have a think about what has helped you in the past and try things out that you may feel help you. Make a note of what difference this has made and how you can build on the skills you are learning to manage your emotions over time. So to end the second session, the most important things I would like you to remember is that you're not a robot. You have feelings, all parents have emotions, and they are not 100% perfect all of the time. You don't have to get it right all of the time, not at all. For the tasks over the next week, we want you to see if you can start putting into practice showing your child how you manage your emotions and how they can manage theirs. Look to validate their emotions and encourage them to problem solve for themselves. Reflect on how this went and what has worked well. Secondly, have a think about ways your child will respond well to pace and start putting this into practice. Again, reflect on what elements worked well and how this could start improving your relationships, but also help your child to manage their own emotions. Next week, we'll be looking at children's basic needs and play. We hope you have found this webinar enjoyable and helpful, and we look forward to joining you again next week.